Good morning, local peacemakers and loyal rumblers. It is July 14, 2022, a great day for the future. We have 3,060 days left until Thanksgiving Day 2030. It's our first episode back, so I don't want to waste your time. In the future, you could expect a little free speak, but for now, let's keep the original spirit of our show. A safe space for peace and learning at any pace. Here we go. Sorry, this is like the third time I've been recording this. The last time the cell phone camera was totally not on, but let's see if we can do this in one take. Here we go. Of course, I have a script. All right. World peace right now seems expensive. So thanks for sharing our show, World Peace for Free, the world's first ad-free, non-fear-mongering newscast. I'm your time-traveling host, and you're watching in the future, and come on. I could do better. Come on. Ugh. Apparently, I give myself a Boston accent when I need to pep myself up. With tough love. All right. This is the first time I'm doing the show for an hour. Like, I usually it's like 20 clips, 20-minute clips. Now it's like, whew. It's a little bit nerve-wracking, but it's okay. I did a lot of work on my mental health or personality thingamajig for this character, and it's getting there. All right. Remember, we're learning at a pace, at a comfortable pace, and I could give myself room for mistakes. Okay. World peace right now seems expensive. So thanks for sharing our show, World Peace for Free, the world's first ad-free, non-fear-mongering newscast. I'm your time-traveling host, and you're watching in the future, and we're building the most subscribed YouTube channel not part of their ad money program. So if you haven't yet, please subscribe to see what the algorithm will do with a podcast like that. Now, let's check out all this news sent by you. If you don't know, every show starts with fan mail. Then news from the past with present moment reflections in this new age of retrospection. Let's begin. I hold in my hand letters, hermetically sealed, messages from hyperspace, encoded with news our listeners want immortalized on our Instagram timeline. We cannot open these envelopes, but I could read them to you through the power vested in me by Cornelius deGrasse Tyson. Here we go. Aruba, Jamaica, ooh, I want to take you. Ooh! This one reveals advice from the last great Roman emperor. Let's check this out. Dear time-traveling minister, I got a simple one for you. This clip immortalizes a moment in our story together. Ryan Holiday is known for his deep research into the last great Roman emperor, Marcus Aurelius. In the clip I sent you, he trades idea gems with Joe Rogan and has revelations that could only happen through deep conversations. The rabbit hole this sent me down made me a better person. I hope it could do the same for your listeners. Love you, Broby-Wan Kenobi. Oh man, you gotta love friends that know how to make you laugh. You gotta cherish them too. All right. So usually, I would play the clip and I would talk in between the clip to save time. But now that we have all the time, I want to just share the clip, watch it through and through without any interruptions, so that when you listen to this at your convenience, it's mostly intact. But if there's something that I gotta interrupt, I'll probably interrupt. But I really hate that, so I'm gonna do my best to avoid that. Let's go ahead and check this out. Boop.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
I knew I didn't want to be a person who's just like taking a percentage of.
If you already noticed, yes, it is fast forwarded because I care about your time. I'm a time traveler, duh.
What other people do. I wanted to make stuff. Like I wanted to actually produce and create things. So I knew I wanted to be a writer. And when I first read the Stoics, I was just like, shit, this is it. Like when I read Meditations for the first time, I was 19. I was sitting in my college apartment, and I was just like, not only have I never read anything like this, I've never even heard of anything like this. Because you have the most powerful man in the world writing notes to himself that he never thinks are going to be published. Like pretty much every other book ever written was like a writer writing to an audience.
Yeah.
And Meditations was never intended to be published. He'd probably be mortified that we even have it. And so it was just a kind of philosophy and a way of thinking that I hadn't heard in any school, in any class from any adult in my life. And I was like, I want to tell people about this.
Marcus Aurelius, one of the more interesting things about the stuff that he writes is how relevant it is today. Like when you read it, you wouldn't imagine that this is being written by a man. Like how many years ago was that?
1900, 2000 years ago. He's writing in like the mid 150s, 160s AD.
very relevant. Like the way he writes, I mean, the language is incredibly familiar. It's the same. It's one of the things about we would always make fun of the way people talked a long time ago. Wherefore art thou? Like there's a way of talking that we don't communicate like today. But when Marcus Aurelius writes, and if you read Meditations, it seems very current.
Well, it does depend on the translation, right? Because like if you were reading, and people do this, and I'll recommend Marcus Aurelius, and they'll just get what's free on the internet or whatever. If you're reading a translation from the 1850s or the 1600s, it's going to be in Shakespearean English. Because,
interesting.
Right, because they're translating it into their
vernacular.
Yeah. And so the right translation is key. Do you remember which one you read?
I don't.
I like that. There's a Gregory Hayes translation for the Modern Library, which I think is the most like lyrical and beautiful of all of them. That's the one that I randomly bought on Amazon and had no idea that it was going to be the one that would hit me.
So were the original ones in Latin?
So this is what's crazy about Marcus. So Marcus lives in Rome. The Romans speak Latin, but the philosophical language at that time was Greek. So Marcus was writing to himself in Greek. So it gives you, like, when you read those passages or you listen to them and you're just like, that is one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard. Like there's one passage where he talks about like a stalk of grain bending low under its own weight, the way an olive, falls to the ground. He talks about the way that when you put bread in the oven, it breaks open on top, and we don't know why that happens. It's just this like beautiful inadvertent act of nature. He's just like writing like a poet, like a great writer. And again, he's writing in his non-native tongue to himself, never expecting anyone would see it. How fucking talented. It'd be like finding out it's like a comedian is like funny in their diary. You're just like, wow, you're just naturally that. You're not turning it on or off.
Right.
It's just like intuitively part of you.
Yeah.
But I think your point about how it feels timeless, that actually does feel like a thing I've heard comedians say, which is that like the specific is universal. I don't think he was trying to talk to the audience. I think he was so unflinchingly honest with himself that he was touching something universally human. And that's why, because like we should not be able to relate to his experience at all.
Right.
I mean, there is literally a cult of the emperor that worshipped the emperor and their spouse as living deities. And he controlled the largest army in the world. He had unlimited wealth. He could kill or murder or torture or exile anyone he wanted. People cheered him as he walked in the streets. There's no way we should be able to be like, this passage where he's talking about struggling to get out of bed in the morning and you want to huddle under the warm covers. Like how? Because I guess people are people no matter where you get in life.
People are people, and not everyone gives in to the temptations of being in that position.
Mm-hmm.
And in his case, I think it made him more apt to reflect upon his thoughts and find the source of why he believed what he believed and why he thought what he thought.
Yeah, he says in Meditations, he says, be careful not to be Caesarified. Don't be dyed purple. Because the emperor wore a purple cloak. And purple, now we're just like the color purple. To get purple, it was this complicated process of different merchants. Actually, the founder of Stoicism was a merchant in Tyrian purple. But like slaves would smash up sea snails, dry them on rocks, and this dust would eventually become like the source of purple.
Oh.
So, and he's like, don't be stained purple. So he was like when he becomes emperor, he's like, this will change you if you're not careful. And you have to actively work to make sure that doesn't happen. So he was aware of that.
That was the character in Gladiator, right? Wasn't that Marcus Aurelius? Was it based on him, roughly, loosely?
Well, it's I think one of the great movies of all time. But
great movie. But Peter O'Toole?
Yes, he's the one that Joaquin Phoenix's character kills at the beginning. And then a lot of the sort of things that Maximus says are sort of very Stoic inspired. The irony of that movie is that Joaquin Phoenix probably underplays how bad Marcus Aurelius' son was in real life.
Really?
He really did get killed by a gladiator. He was a psychopath. Immediately destroys all of Marcus's work. It's one of the tragedies of Marcus that he has a POS son.
I've always wondered, like, how that seemed like it's Joffrey from Game of Thrones. Like, that is a very common thing.
Yeah.
Why is that, like, it's an archetype?
It is. There's another great Eastern emperor, Cyrus the Great, and he has a shitty son too. It doesn't look like Queen Elizabeth's kids are that great. But what's interesting about Marcus is, like, it's weird that he's such this great man, and then most people know nothing about him. But like Marcus's father was not emperor, so there's what they call the 5 good emperors. So it's basically in all of Roman history, there's like 5 good emperors, and they happen in a row. And they happen in a row because each one does not have a male heir, so they don't have sons. So in the Roman tradition, it was much more common if you didn't have a son, you would adopt a son. And so the Emperor Hadrian is old, probably gay, does not have any children, and he adopts. He sees something in Marcus that Marcus is young, but he sort of starts mentoring this boy. They actually go like hunting together. Like he sees something special in this kid. Marcus's nickname was Verismus, or the truthful one. But he's like just a kid. And Hadrian realizes he's too young to name him emperor. So he selects a man named Antoninus Pius, who's the great politician of the time, and makes him emperor on condition that he adopt Marcus Aurelius. So Marcus, and then the thinking was Antoninus Pius would live for like 5 years, and then Marcus would be king. And in fact, he lives for like 19 years. So Marcus has like a 20-year apprenticeship in being the emperor under a man who like could have killed him, who could have been corrupted by power, but is this incredible example. And that's why at the beginning of Meditations, Marcus has like a 2-page thank you letter to Antoninus, his adopted stepfather.
Oh, wow.
It's fucking crazy.
And his son, what was the deal with the wife?
Oh, Marcus's wife?
Yes.
So Marcus's wife, Faustina, is, I guess it would be, Faustina is Antoninus' daughter. So they're not related, but they married the family together. Marcus loves her. They're married a very long time. There are rumors that she's unfaithful, but as far as we know, Marcus pays no attention to this, does not believe them. But the tragedy of their marriage is Marcus loses like 7 children before they reach adulthood.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine that?
Well, that was very common back then, though, wasn't it?
7's a lot, though.
It is a lot, but isn't that's one of the reasons why the general age that people lived to was so low back then? People think that people died, your age of expected death. It wasn't that. It's just like you died in childbirth. You died, when you were young. You died from infection. It wasn't that people didn't live as long.
Yes. Like, there's lots of old people in Rome. Mm-hmm. It's just like getting
to
over. Like, if you made it to 40, maybe you can make it to 80.
Right.
But like, chances are you weren't going to make it to 20.
Yeah, that makes sense. But they're all sword fighting and shit.
That's also true. I mean, just imagine you could cut your hand and die of an infection.
Yeah, real. And obviously they're shitting in the streets and this fucking horrible.
Even rich
diseases.
people don't have toilets.
Yeah.
Like they know nothing.
Yeah.
So that's one of the sort of not rationalizations, but if you're like, how does it go so wrong that this great man leaves the empire to his son?
Yeah.
Well, he does have a male heir. That's a problem, unlike all his predecessors. But it's that every one of the sons that he wanted to succeed him died.
Oh.
And there's some speculation that Marcus's plan. So this is the other crazy thing about Marcus. If I'm nerding out, you can.
No, please go.
So Marcus has a stepbrother. Through this crazy adoption process, he has a stepbrother, and so that he inherits through Hadrian. It's a complicated thing, but he has a stepbrother, and so like we know what kings do to their rivals. Like you have to kill them, right? The first emperor of Rome, Octavian, he's Julius Caesar's nephew. Julius Caesar has a half son with Cleopatra. Or he has a half brother, or whatever. He has a son with Cleopatra, a son out of wedlock. And Octavian has 2 Stoic teachers who instruct him to murder his rival, which he promptly does, or have murdered. So the precedent was like you can't have too many Caesars, like you can't have more than one viable heir. And Marcus, when he's Antoninus' favorite, Antoninus preps him, he ascends to the throne. The first thing Marcus does is he names his brother Lucius Verus co-emperor, which is not only never happened, basically before or since. It is a nod to how the Republic was. The Republic of Rome, before it becomes a monarchy, is led by 2 consuls, like 2 elected presidents who serve together as a check against power. So Marcus, by naming, he can't put it back to a republic, which is the plot of Gladiator. He can name himself a co-emperor. And the thinking is that's what he was planning to do with his sons, but they all died.
So in the movie, Joaquin Phoenix kind of kills the dad.
He kills the dad because Marcus does not, in the movie, not in real life, Marcus really knows his son cannot be king.
But in real life,
he passes it to him.
So, and how did Marcus Aurelius die?
Of the plague.
Oh, wow.
So that's the other crazy. But again, Marcus was writing in what we now call the Antonine Plague, like they named it after him. But it's like a global pandemic. It starts in the east, overwhelms Rome. 5-10 million people die. They have no way of stopping it. So Marcus leads through all of that. And then the suspicion is that he catches it at the end, realizes he has it, has to send his son away so he doesn't give it to his son, sets in motion like a series of advisors who should lead his son, and then his son promptly like gets rid of all of them and goes bad.
So how does a man like that, who's so introspective and so thoughtful, particularly for the times, how does a man like that have a son that's such a piece of shit?
I don't know. I mean, one argument is he's a psychopath and there's sort of nothing you can do. Like, no blame whatsoever. The other argument, the more likely one, is like most great men, and we're talking about history, so it's mostly great men, but again, Queen Elizabeth has crappy kids. Most great men are shitty fathers. Gandhi was a bad father. Winston Churchill was not a good father.
Why is that?
I think they're busy.
Well, there you go. Don't be too busy, or else you'll have bad kids. No, that's not the lesson of it, and that's why the reason why I like sharing these clips, and I like being shared these clips because it reminds me that not everything that you see is supposed to be taken as fact. And one of the things that Marcus Aurelius says is everything that you hear is opinion, and everything you everything is everything you hear. It's on the Instagram. And by the way, I hope you guys check that out. I love how it's going to be kind of set up like looking like a timeline, and I'm going to do my best to add more value to that soon. But we're trying to. I want to work on what's pretty now. Once again, this is just me, and we don't, like, as you know, we're not part of any ad money program, so we're not even trying for that. We're trying to look for audience members that enjoy the message of our show, which is as simple as our title, World Peace for Free. And that was an interesting clip, and I'm very glad that I was sent that as a fan mail, and you guys kind of you kind of set me in a good mood because look, there's things I'm gonna look up right now. There's that whole idea of I didn't realize that the people really truly believe that they were deities. You imagine all the human sacrifices and all that stuff that was going on during the Egyptian times, and then you realize how close in they were, like those empires were with each other, and you kind of understand like how we are, like all the power struggles that they had back then is still something we deal with now. It's just that we probably have more distractions or we have more comfort to not be too bothered by them. It was a Roman poet that said, if you give them bread and circus, they'll never revolt. They as citizens, and this is advice given to people in the ruling class. But we know all these things. We know what the ruling class is. We know what the powers that they hold of us and how they hold it over us. We're able to share it with the technology that we have today. Now, I understand that you got some of you. Well, when we started, you were used to me interrupting in between in the clips, but I don't feel like we should. I don't think we need to. I think we could move on forward with the show and kind of just understand that this is a medium for us to be able to look back 10 years from now and see all the things that we did before that led us to the present moment when you're watching this. And hopefully it's a better place than this whole idea of you will owe nothing and you'll be happy. Which, by the way, I have thoughts on that. Not everybody has to see it as a scary thing. That's what I worry about. People using uh, sentences that people can be easily misconstrued. I'm sure there's a deeper meaning to it, and if there isn't, please inform me, because I also enjoy reading all your conspiracy ideas as well. But it's just so heavy, and I refuse to believe that. I can't say where I refuse to believe, but I have some feeling to withhold 100%. Withhold my beliefs, I guess, because it's it's a lot. I it's a lot, and I have to imagine that these elites are intelligent enough to understand that. Oh, they could also be people that lost faith, and that's the reason why they're villainized. But I feel even if an AI became a villain, the AI would understand that it needs, if you really want a world full of solutions, you need to create an environment where people can share solutions and build a better society for each other. Which is really awesome because I did a little preview hunt, and I noticed that the next two clips are from Russell Brand, a really interesting transformation during the pandemic. A lot of people went through a lot of interesting transformations during the times that we were shut in, and we had a lot of time to reflect on ourselves, including me, and reflect on our decisions that brought us to where we are now. You know, that idea, like where you are is because of the steps that you took in the past and where you feel like you want to be in the future. So, and Russell Brand became quite a functional news source because amongst all the news source people, he's the one that actually shares quotes from the articles that he reads, and he's doing actual research. I'm doing something similar with the Fact Check Review Board, but it's more about me using this to learn, so I'll not forget what I just listened to. I'm so glad to live in the future where we have technology to learn at our own pace. When I was a kid, I was that kid who possibly potentially had attention issues. I was never diagnosed, but I really did not enjoy the conversations that you have growing up. You know, kind of like, well, I'll give you an instance. In third grade, I was the kid I was just so disruptive that my teacher, my third grade teacher, put me in the corner of the whole classroom. You know, like at first, and you know, for some of you listening, you're like, okay, of course, you put the quiet kid, put the noisy kid in the corner so you'd stop making noises. But the thing is, you get a reputation from that. Now I was the kid that was so noisy. I'm not here to learn. So when I did want to ask for help, and I did get the courage to ask for help, I did ask for help from the smart kids there. And it's always hard because I'll never forget it. The words were, "Why would I waste time helping you, someone who's probably not going to be paying attention anyway?" And it made the rest of school suck. But that was before the internet now, and I have no reason to get mad at the past anymore because I have infinite time to potentially sort of infinite time to learn as much as I can. But let's go ahead and check out the next clip. This one shows Biden's first military action in his first month of presidency. Dear Mr. Time Traveler Host Man, I wanted to highlight Russell Brand's evolution to a competent, credible newscaster. This is him a year ago, reporting what he found interesting. I like your spin on newscasting, but you really were held back by your old tech. Can't wait to see where this goes for you. Rooting for you. Glad to see you're you're finally part of the Apple family. Love, Angelina Broly. I wonder which friend sent that. By the way, if you guys are wondering why people are sending me fake names, it's because when this show first started, we called it America's Anonymous Confessional, and the way how we got around that was you would sign up to our locals page, www.locals.com. When you sign up to our locals page, and you're not a supporter, I can't see your email. So that's how people got around with the anonymous confessional part. It's because you can't see the names, and that's it sort of worked. It was eye-opening. It was also during the pandemic, so a lot of fear, a lot of scared folks, and a lot of practice into public speaking. When this first started, this was to help me to get used to talking to strangers and get out of my introverted shell. And people that know me are like, "Oh, Eric, you're introverted?" Yes. See, this is what self-reflection does. Sometimes introverted people could be taught to force yourself to be extroverted, and that's not good because you're not even showing who you are to your friends. You're showing this manufactured version of yourself. So anybody that's introverted that feel like you have to act extroverted, don't do that. It's gonna mess you up. It's gonna mess you up so bad. The reason why I was gone for a month was because I realized that if I kept on doing the show the way how I was doing it, I would be flipping off personality switches all the time. Who I am in public, who I am not in public, who I am with friends, and who I am with family. I don't feel like that's the right way to live. I feel like you should live as you are wherever you are. But we got to build that future first. So let's check out this clip. Forever Wars, business as usual under Biden. It's bearing the lead in that message, man. This is going to be heavy. All right, let's check this out.
In order to gain and regain the confidence of the world, we have to prove again that America says what it means and means what it says.
I mean, bloody hell, that's just sort of idiosyncratic, empty rhetoric. That might as well be in the Cat in the Hat saying that. You can't get it.
This is his first month in presidency, by the way, so don't be alarmed. He's not bombing people anymore. This is news from the past to see how it affected our president, or if it even affected our president. The next clip I already previewed a little bit. It shows it's Jimmy Dore going on Tucker Carlson, and for those of you that aren't familiar with American politics, Tucker Carlson's like Russell Brand has interesting words to say about it.
Big gig these days. Hello all of you, today we're talking about Joe Biden and the Forever Wars, in particular the ongoing bombing of Middle Eastern nations and his relationship with Saudi Arabia. Let's take a look. Spoiler alert, you're not going to think, oh, this is all much better now.
Now we're watching some breaking news tonight. Joe Biden has made his first big military move, launching airstrikes against a target in Syria.
After just over a month in office, Joe Biden ordered his first bombing campaign with airstrikes targeting Iranian-backed fighters in Syria. The US strikes killed 22 people.
The action was retaliation for the militia strikes in Iraq last week.
Retaliation? That can't be the motivation. I literally tell my children not to do that.
The Defense Department said the operation sends an unambiguous message that the president will act to protect American coalition personnel.
Diane Randall said, no matter the justification or number of casualties, the Syria bombing was contrary to President Biden's election commitment to end forever wars.
It's long past time we end the forever wars, which have cost us untold blood and treasure.
The deadly cycle continues apace. War in Iraq, war in Syria, war in Afghanistan, war in Yemen, war in Libya, war in Somalia. After 20 years, the government is now conducting militarized counter-terrorism operations in 85 countries.
The Pentagon says he ordered the strike earlier Thursday and described...
See, this is one of those things that kind of kept me away from filming. It's just tough stuff. And knowing that he's talking about forever wars and seeing where we are now, when this at the time of filming this, woof.
It as a proportionate military response.
It's a weird piece of diplomatic language, a proportionate military response. That's 22 human beings' lives have ended, but perhaps even more significant is the indication that there is just a continuation of a long prevailing mentality that the US government has a global role that permits them to enforce their policies and intentions across sovereign nations, always under the guise of goodness. Concerning for me, too, as someone from another country who watched that election unfold and the civil strife that it brought to the surface, to observe, well, all that argument took place in a space of distinction that doesn't include the bombing of other countries. So what is it that we expect and want from a president? And if it doesn't include moral and ethical conduct abroad, then what are our own values?
The top Republican on the U.S. Foreign Affairs Committee writing, responses like these are a necessary deterrent. Many Democrats also supportive.
Tomasz Piesianek says Biden's administration includes hawks from the Obama era and other disciples of imperialism. A return to the hope and change era of President Obama, who bombed 7 countries in 6 years. It heralds a return to business as usual, where Wall Street and large corporations dictate domestic policy, while the State Department and Pentagon spearhead America's imperialist ambitions abroad.
It's so crazy. That clip that just showed right now has RT on it, which is Russian news, and which is so crazy. You're watching this, and you're watching this news segment in the past, knowing what's going on in the present. I can't wait to see what you guys cooked up for me on the next clip.
Like these slogans, hope, change, honesty, end the forever wars, they should mean something.
But some lawmakers questioning whether the president has the legal authority to act without congressional consent. Democratic Senator Tim Kaine writing, offensive military action without congressional approval is not constitutional, absent extraordinary circumstances.
There you are. I suppose we're already now in a conversation where, military action without congressional approval seems like it's something that's problematic. I don't want to seem like I'm venting against people that are optimistic about, Joe Biden or anything like that, because I'm sure everyone wants what's sort of best in their heart of hearts. But that optimism cannot blind us to the reality that regardless of who is in power, you're still going to see, unconstitutional activity, bombing of foreign countries. James Risen writes, the military-industrial complex tend to support expansionist American national security and foreign policy. Since 9/11, they've pushed for a continuation of American military involvement in the Middle East, particularly in Iraq and Afghanistan. They are driven by greed and power. They believe that endless war is good for business. It is good for business. That belief is true. Because I suppose people have got to make stuff and sell stuff and do things. Again, a little bit like what we were saying about the pandemic. If a policy or idea or state suits the interests of the powerful, it's very difficult to change it. America has become accustomed to a permanent state of war. That's true, isn't it? And again, people talk about, evoke George Orwell in particular, 1984, when we talk about the surveillance state. But also, an important component of that surveillance state was a continuing state of fear and a continuing state of war, of enmity towards sort of an abstract, often unnamed other to facilitate these measures at home. I suppose these ideas aren't separate. We shouldn't, should we, look at Biden's actions abroad as abstract? I don't know. He's doing that in the Middle East. That's not people in our countries. It's for people, hold on a minute, what are we voting for? What do we believe in? Who are these people? What are their intentions? And if you want to look at it from a selfish perspective, if that's how their foreign policy plays out, what is likely to happen when it comes to their use of data mining, their deals with big tech companies. Only a small slice of society, including many poor and rural teenagers, fight and die, while a permanent national security elite rotates among senior government posts, contracting companies, think tanks and television commentary, opportunities that would disappear if America was suddenly at peace. To most of America, war has become not only tolerable, but profitable, and so there is no longer any great incentive to end it. So with foreign policy, forever wars, and bombing, it's pretty clear that Biden is business as usual. Let's look at the pledges he made around America's controversial relationship with Saudi Arabia, a nation known for human rights infringements and many other ideas. You don't have to look around for too long to see some pretty disturbing stuff. But also, of course, there was that murder of that journalist sanctioned by the Crown Prince. Let's see what Biden said and then what Biden did, and then draw your own conclusions.
Mr. Vice President, the CIA has concluded that the leader of Saudi Arabia directed the murder of US-based journalist Jamal Khashoggi. President Trump has not punished senior Saudi leaders. Would you?
Yes.
Yes.
And I would make it very clear. We were going to, in fact, make them pay the price and make them, in fact, the pariah that they are.
Yeah. Make them the pariah that they are.
President Biden is facing growing criticism for failing to sanction Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman for the killing of Jamal Khashoggi.
Joe Biden has defended his decision to waive any punishment for Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince in the murder of a US-based journalist. He's waived that. He's wafted it out. He was very passionate on the telly. Yeah, but I had to say that then.
There's very little social redeeming value in the present government in Saudi Arabia.
It's starting to seem like you say certain things when you're campaigning and do other stuff when you're in government. What does that make you? A regular politician. What does that make all the hyperbole and excitement and standing up in cars and blowing up balloons and waving flags when you're elected? A bit silly.
There is no actual sanctions against the Crown Prince. There's no travel ban, nothing, just a public naming and shaming. So it's quite short of saying we're going to make this guy a pariah.
The reason that he waived it, claiming that acting against the Saudi royals would have been diplomatically unprecedented for the United States. It would have been diplomatically unprecedented when you said that. Sometimes you have to do hard stuff if you're the president of a country. I would have thought, I didn't realise that being president of a country might involve diplomatically complex situations. I'll tell you what, mate. Don't be the president then. If you want an easy job, go and get a job at a farmer's market. I didn't realise that working at this farmer's market would involve selling fruit and veg at inflated prices just on the basis that it's organic. Well, it does, Joe. That's what farmer's markets are.
The Washington Post contributor was considered a fierce critic of the kingdom and frequently condemned the country's human rights abuses.
Jeffrey Fields, Associate Professor of the Practice of International Relations, said, like his predecessors, Biden is grappling with the reality. Saudi Arabia is needed to achieve certain US objectives in the Middle East. Welcome to politics, everyone. Welcome to politics. Like those of you that were jumping around and dancing about, this is the deal, right? Change, hope, these empty words clanging like trash cans in the campaigns have no meaning, no resonance if they are not followed up by action. I posit that in order to get that action, you require serious, systemic change, not superficial, artificial, let's feel a bit better about ourselves for half hour change.
Press Secretary Jen Psaki addressed some of the criticism during an interview yesterday.
Our objective is to recalibrate the relationship, prevent this from ever happening again.
Recalibrating a relationship just means realigning it and getting it working again. That's what recalibration means. Like once you've recalibrated them, you've essentially said kill as many journalists as you want. We're not going to do anything about it.
And find ways, as there are still, to work together with Saudi leadership while still making clear where we feel action is unacceptable.
What that is placatory rhetoric. Isn't it? You've just found yourself in a position where you said you were going to do one thing, you did another thing, the very thing most people would have assumed you would have done. Don't think in your own personal life when you sort of feel like something's going to happen, and then that thing does happen. You have a particular sinking feeling in your gut, don't you? Like, oh man, I knew that was going to happen. And then look into the face of those people and ask, how can I trust you now? Because my sense is that whilst you may make superficial pledges and rhetorical gestures towards civil rights and change, ultimately things will remain exactly the same. And in particular, nothing will ever be allowed to happen that could penetrate the sphere of interests that are at the heart of power. Those will be protected at all costs, even if that means flying directly in the face of promises made on the campaign trail. Do you think that change and hope lie in this direction, or is it simply business as usual, more of the same?
Dancing President Trump made Saudi Arabia his first foreign trip.
Trump and other White House officials reminded critics at the time that Saudi Arabia buys billions of dollars in weapons from the US.
President Obama went to Saudi Arabia and met the king despite profound reservations about its human rights record.
President Obama, though, visited Saudi Arabia more than any other American president 4 times in 8 years. I'm laughing at myself because I still, if I see Barack Obama talking on telly, I still think, oh, he seems so nice, he's so cool, and his wife's on Netflix, and it all seems cool and nice and good and how you want the world to be. But I'm so sorry. We have to accept reality. Visited Saudi Arabia more than any other American president to discuss everything from Iran to oil production. I guess what we're being slapped in the face with here is a little something called reality.
Why is the United States relationship with Saudi Arabia so important?
So for the United States, Saudi Arabia being the biggest producer of hydrocarbons in the world is very important because the oil markets, the stability of the oil markets, the reliability of the oil markets depends substantially on Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is also a big factor in Gulf affairs, and America's interest in the Middle East is anchored with Saudi politics, and so stability there is important.
What that sort of tells you really is real change is not possible because he's using words like anchored. This is the reality. So a sort of a fairer thing to do on the campaign trail would be, no, we're not going to hold that bloke to account, the Crown Prince. We'll recalibrate our relationship because the reality is, and Donald Trump speaks a little bit more like that, so that's the reality of our relationship. So whether you like Trump a lot or you dislike him intensely, what you have to acknowledge is he sort of spoke more plainly. That's the thing that's so mental about that era, that it took this peculiar person to speak in a way that chimed with people and seemed more explicit about the reality of government. For example, when he said about his relationship with Russia, you think our country's so innocent? It's weird. It's weird. I'm beyond politics, is where I position myself. I wouldn't be interested in either of those outcomes. I don't think any of them are going to lead to a better life for you or for me, to tell you the truth. But I am interested when someone behaves in such a peculiar manner.
They're spending $110 billion purchasing military equipment and other things. If we don't sell it to them, they'll say, well, thank you very much, we'll buy it from Russia, or thank you very much, we'll buy it from China. That doesn't help us.
If the fact is that the current economic model requires those relationships with Saudi Arabia, you might as well stop lying about it. You might as well tell the truth. Well, we can't really do anything about that, to be honest, even though it's really bad, because we've got economic ties and mineral and energy ties that we simply cannot breach. But don't pretend that you're any different. Just say we're the same. We're the same. The difference is not meaningful. Hey, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation. Please subscribe to this channel and significantly like and comment these videos. Get them sent around places and join us in the conversation down there below. I respond to the comments, and occasionally we do comments videos. We'll do more of them if you do a lot of comments too. Sign up for my mailing list on russellbrand.com and please consider it.
I'm gonna, since the next clip is he's gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna interrupt it. I'm gonna stop it there, and I want to say something about the reason why I don't want to interrupt things, because I know that's the normalcy. I know that when you watch things on the YouTube, on the Instagram Reels and Shorts, when people are commenting on news, which, by the way, I have total respect for the for the sportscasters, like back in the day that watched like March Madness games and had different different TV screens and doing all that stuff. because it seems like this is what Russell Brand's been doing, but this is probably like his hobby. He's a comedian, you know. He has to have the finger on the what's a good not the diaspora. What's the word? The word where you know what the pop culture things are happening. What's that? Come on, man. No, it's because you're tired. Yeah, because I'm tired. This is the third time I'm running through this, but it's okay because we have the next clip coming up. So yeah, the reason why I don't interrupt is because I was back in the day in college. I was in communications, and we were talking about how to convince people of things and the ethical ways of convincing people of things. And one of the it's kind of like light side and dark side. So there's manipulation and there's persuasion. Persuasion is actually the ethical thing that you want. You want to be persuaded. You do not want to be manipulated. And one of the dark side tactics, one of the manipulation tactics out there is interruption. And in this grand scheme of things, I feel like it's not good for me to chime in after every thought, because what that'll do, studies have shown, or at least the studies that I did my research papers on, is that it doesn't let you create your own ideas, and that's not what the show is about. I want a world where everybody has the opportunity to create their own ideas, not to be manipulated into thinking that you should follow somebody's opinions. But I know there's the conversation about like journalism and the zeitgeist. And tapping into the zeitgeist of pop culture, and tapping into what everybody is thinking, so that you could move everybody to where you want them to think. I'm afraid of that, so I don't interrupt. I hope that's okay with you guys. And if anything else, I love feedback. That's how we make our show a lot better. I hope we can move up from 19 subscribers to the entire world and see what the show will be when we're the most subscribed YouTube channel that's not part of their ad money program. Like, I'm so curious what's going to happen. But we can only get there if this becomes a good show. And the only way we could do that is if you guys are honest with me and tell me what works and what doesn't work. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. Let's get on to the next clip here. This one shows Jimmy Dore going on Tucker Carlson. Dear Mr. Minister, oh wow, another message from hyperspace? That happens to follow a format kind of like fan mail, old news, and new news. This news is a newer Russell Brand episode. Now this show could finally be a show. Come on, man. Now this show could finally be a show about comparing perspectives on humanity's progress through time. Let's do that again. Now the show could be finally be about comparing perspectives on humanity's progress through time. You must reveal the method of your magic to us soon. Love, Evander Brolyfield. Oh man, I love you guys. Let's check out this clip.
Our friend Jimmy Dore went on Tucker this week. So is the Bernie Sanders voting Democrat now a member of the far right? And what does it mean when the only place on the mainstream media where Jimmy Dore can go is Fox News?
He's so happy now. So the previous clip was like a year ago, and now this is June 21st. This clip is from June 21st, 2022, and it's talking about the name of this video is just called "This Is Epic." Let's see.
Hello there, you 5.7 million awakening wonders. Thank you for joining me on this voyage towards truth, where we look at complex information from a variety of sources, bring them together and see what coalesces. Now, we talk about the mainstream media all the time, don't we? We talk about how defunct it is, how immoral it is, how the way that it's funded is complex and prevents it from conveying the kind of truth and even the kind of complexity that we are all entitled to hear and to try to understand. Today, I want to talk to you about Jimmy Dore appearing on Tucker Carlson. Isn't it interesting that Tucker Carlson is the only person that have like Glenn Greenwald on? He's the only person that will attack big business. And lots of you that are like left-leaning or Democrat in your previous biases or just in your persuasion will think that Tucker Carlson maybe is what did someone call him once, a human boat shoe? A lot of people don't care for Tucker Carlson. But what interests me is that Fox News used to be a channel that we continually berated and baited when it was like Bill O'Reilly and Sean Hannity and all those guys. We used to torment them about their stance on numerous issues. But nowadays, if you want a channel that's going to criticize big business, big tech, big corporations, mainstream media generally and broadly, peculiarly, you're most likely to find that on Fox News. Why don't we have a leftist mainstream media outlet that would showcase a voice like Jimmy Dore's? Why is that? What has become of the left? If you don't subscribe to our channel already, subscribe to it now. down, please turn on the notification bell to ensure that you see our new content. We upload a new video every single day, and they're all, without question, fantastic. Now let's get to this one.
No, for sure is that Vladimir Putin did it. Shut up, traitor, he did.
Even in his intro, Tucker Carlson is one of the few dissenting voices around the narratives around Putin and Russia. It used to be that demands for patriotism and an unflinching, blind obedience to patriotic narratives was also the domain of the right. Strange the way things change.
Jimmy Dore is the host of Jimmy's Dore Show.
Jimmy's Dore Show.
Jimmy's Dore Show.
Like a show that Jimmy does about doors.
He joins us tonight. Now, are you keeping a list of all the things Putin is doing?
Russia's very powerful. They control a lot of things. They overthrew our government. They committed a coup on America. They control the gas prices, and Russia's responsible for our inflation.
Matt Stoller said that there's only $39 billion of trade between Russia and the United States of America, so economic sanctions are ultimately meaningless. Now, whether or not that's an oversimplification, you can decide for yourself whether or not you think the mainstream media and American government amplify the impact of the war between Russia and Ukraine to justify price hikes, economic inequality, intransigence in government. Do you think this is all as a result of the war between Russia and Ukraine, or do you think there's ineptitude, inefficiency, and corruption elsewhere in American political culture?
Last time I checked, Russia couldn't get their good vodka into Trader Joe's. So I don't think they're really controlling everything like they say they are, okay? So the Democrats right now are in power. They have complete control of government, and like all politicians, they don't want to take the blame for anything.
This story from the Financial Times this weekend is a demonstration of how the Democrat Party is ultimately bereft of ideas and relies instead on trying to incite suspicion, doubt, and hatred, and in the absence of being able to use Trump as a kind of scapegoat or lightning rod for negativity and doubt, and remember, I'm not a fan of Trump, I know a lot of you guys like him, is content to use Putin in the exact same role. Former Secretary of State and Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton said in an interview with the Financial Times published Friday that the US is on the precipice of losing our democracy. We're standing on the precipice of losing our democracy, and everything that everybody else cares about then goes out the window. It seems to me that there are ideas, words, and even physical buildings that are held up as sacrosanct, as representatives of a set of ideals that I no longer see in practice in American life. Like, what is this democracy that Hillary Clinton is talking about? Where is this fairness? Where is this justice? I know the world could get a lot worse. I know I'd rather live in America than China. I'd rather live in America than feudal Britain. But that doesn't mean that we should stop aspiring to create more democratic, fairer societies. In Clinton's view, Putin's only realistic path to victory in Ukraine would be Trump's re-election in 2024. If Trump had won in 2020, he would have pulled out of NATO. I have no doubt about that, she says. There's a few assumptions here. One, why would Putin win the war in Ukraine if Trump was president? Well, how can you underwrite that statement by saying that there's collusion between Russia and Trump? Well, I think it's been proven that that simply wasn't the case. And I don't have any real reason to believe that NATO is unequivocally a positive force, far less that Trump would automatically leave NATO, although he frequently spoke relatively negatively about it.
They want you to blame everybody and everything or anybody and anything for the pain that you're feeling right now, except blame them, the people with the power right now. And so that's why everything comes back to Putin, because Putin is a proxy for their Trump hate.
Goddamn Putin made me fall off my bicycle.
What they don't want us to realize is that we have a unipolar government, right? So if you vote for Joe Biden, you're voting for Goldman Sachs. If you Mitch McConnell, the same thing. You're voting for our oligarchy. True. And they don't want you to know that. And as soon as people wake up that we've been being screwed by the same billionaires that control Joe Biden, that control the Republican Party, that's what scares them. They don't want us to, they don't want me on your show talking to your audience, telling them that people on the left, we smell a rat. And we know that Joe Biden is completely controlled by the oligarchy and the corporations.
The kind of pledges that politicians make on their way into power, in their way into administration, suggest that they have incredible influence. We're going to give you a fairer, better America. We're going to solve these problems. But once in power, what they look for are convenient scapegoats to blame for their own inaction, because they know, of course, it's necessary to deploy any rhetoric at all to get into a position of power. But once there, nothing is going to change, because precisely as Jimmy Dore excellently explains there, they are at the service of the same oligarchical class as the Republican Party. Ultimately, if you want to change the quality of life for ordinary Americans, ordinary British people, or ordinary people all over the world, we have to attack institutional corruption and the relationships that exist between unelected globalist bodies, big tech, big business, mainstream media, and whatever stooge state government happens to be operating in your country at this time.
Right now, the American people are paying the price. What are we paying the price for? Not for Putin's inflation, not for Putin's gas hike. This is Joe Biden's invasion. This is NATO's invasion. This is Joe Biden's policies. These are Joe Biden's policies that are wrecking the dollar, that are propping up the ruble to it's stronger than it's ever been.
You'll be astonished to learn that the sanctions against Russia mean that Russia is experiencing a kind of economic boom at the moment, and the real victims of economic sanctions against Russia are Americans. We'll do a story on that later this week.
And they're blaming a foreign country. Imagine if Trump did that. They'd be making jokes about it every night on the nightly news. Of course they're not. I mean, the nightly talk shows. But of course they're not. They're all coddling. You saw Jimmy Kimmel have to coddle that old man, the guy who probably got stuck in a couch before he left that place. This is and you know Joe Biden's not making the decisions.
It's nice to see Tucker Carlson just thinly smiling his way through Jimmy Dore's epic rant there. Also makes me think that I've got to go on Fox News. I mean, it's the only place where you're going to hear that kind of rhetoric. Why can't Jimmy Dore go on MSNBC and talk like that, or CNN and talk like that, for precisely the reasons he's outlined? It'll be fantastic to see voices from the left, which you can see ultimately share a great many interests with Tucker Carlson's audience. Because whether or not you traditionally vote for the Republican Party or the Democrat Party, ultimately I'm sure you're interested in your own individual freedom, collective freedom for your community, a degree of fairness, some control over your economic life, a right to pursue your own happiness, stuff that's actually enshrined in the Constitution. The minute we begin to recognise that we have more in common with one another than that which separates us, then we'll be much less easy to control. And I think this is central to American political life, the function of American media, and I think Jimmy Dore has outlined it beautifully there.
We all know that he's mentally impaired, and we all know that Kamala Harris isn't making those decisions because she also can't speak in clear sentences. So who is really running the country? Well, whoever runs the Democratic Party, which is a handful of billionaires, those are the ones. They don't want to take responsibility for that. They want you to blame your neighbor. They won't want you to be angry at the oligarchs or Fauci or Big Pharma or the media that controls you, that makes you think that essential medicines are poison. They want you to blame your neighbor. It's everybody is a Trumper or they're not. It's you're with us or against us. And that's the only message they have left. And then they have censorship left because they have failed, Tucker.
These are the kind of alliances we have to focus on. People from apparently opposite ends of a very narrow spectrum coming together to talk about the points that we can all agree on. And doubtless there will be cultural and indeed political points of disagreement. That is why the principle of decentralization becomes vital. If you run your town and community in a particular way and other people run their town and community in a particular way, why does it matter? As long as we leave one another alone. As long as there aren't centralized media forces, government and corporate forces continually generating tension, disempowering ordinary people to centralize and advance their own economic and cultural interests, then what does it matter if people have minor or indeed major disagreements about the way that their community should be run?
Why do you think it is that Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer are the leaders in the House and Nancy in the Senate, and Nancy is the leader in the, because they're not leaders. Those people have negative charisma. I wouldn't ask Chuck Schumer directions to the freeway. Why are they the leaders? Because they're the ones who take the most money from the billionaire class that actually runs this country. They take the money from them and they disperse it to the other members of Congress, so they vote for them as leader, not because they're leaders, but because they're the most corrupt.
Man, is that true? Great, Jimmy Dore. Great to see you tonight. Thank you so much.
Jimmy Dore has appeared as a guest on our channel. For those of you who don't know, he's a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat. His father was a cop. He's from an ordinary working family. He voted for Bernie Sanders. He may have been smeared as an anti-vaxxer, even though he's had the vaccine and is in fact just criticising the profiteering that went on in the pandemic. That's not conspiracy theory. You can look at the numbers. And I think it's interesting that the only place where a leftist pundit can go on TV and criticise the Democrat Party and inventory the nature of the corruption that we're currently experiencing is Fox News. I know Fox News is not without its problems. It's owned by Rupert Murdoch. Many of you will not be fans of Tucker Carlson. But the fact is, Jimmy Dore was just able to go on there and say that the Democrat Party is run by the same oligarchs that run the Republican Party. This is the fundamental point. The political choices that you're offered in America, that we're offered here in the UK, aren't choices at all. Whenever a political figure emerges that starts to offer genuine alternatives, i.e. ways for ordinary people to have a democratic impact on the governing of their nation, on the governing of their own lives, they are smeared, criticised, condemned, ignored. There are fewer and fewer ways for those voices to succeed within the mainstream media. That in itself is a demonstration of alliance between the state, corporations, big business, and the media. I'm grateful to be able to see conversations between Tucker Carlson and Jimmy Dore, who continues to be critical of a Democratic Party that has become little more than a mouthpiece of the same economic interests that have traditionally governed the Republican Party. Now, I know some of you are conservative and traditional and probably really like Tucker Carlson anyway, and I probably feel a more natural alliance with Jimmy Dore. But whatever your particular political persuasion is, I think it's absolutely vital that we start to formulate new ideas around how we can run our own lives, run our own community, and most importantly of all, get money and corruption out of politics so these fading and failing institutions become once again responsible to the people that pay for them and the people that elect their inhabitants. But that's just what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, have a look at either one of these ones. Remember, turn on the notification bell because YouTube is a big tech platform and we need to make sure that our daily videos are seen by you. If you're not a subscriber yet, subscribe right now and please sign up to our mailing list. I do all sorts of fantastic live events both online and in the real world that you can attend. Most importantly of all, please stay free.
All right,
Our friend.
So there you go. So, no, is that done? That's the button? There you go, that's the button. Please tell me it was done. Okay, good. We did 3 clips today, and I sat through the entire thing, and I absolutely sat here for longer than 20 minutes. I'm very happy about that. But at the same time, I think I'm going to have to change things up. I think I can make a more organized little form thing for me to catch notes on a comment later. But yeah, that was heavy. This is all a lot of and I'm really glad that we opened with Russell Brand because Russell Brand, and if you notice, his theme hasn't changed. We have to, unite in our commonalities with each other versus our differences. We have to generate discourse, not tension. The way how we're doing things, and you can notice in the clip of Russell Brand, even as he's talking, is people think that we could all communicate professionally and eloquently, but there was a lot of cuts in between then, and there's a reason why we do our show the way how we do it without any cuts. But at the same time, we got to upgrade because now I feel like I have the message to talk about. And if you don't want the cuts, you can check it out on Rumble. If you do like and we do have a YouTube-friendly kind of version of it that we're planning. But once again, it's just me running the show right now. I'm a time traveler, so technically I should stop time and make it all perfect, but I can't. I'm also a human being. And it doesn't work that way. We have limitations on that timey-wimey stuff. But look, he said some really good stuff about that we have more in common than our differences. Mainly, we live on the same planet. We bleed the same blood, and we're still going strong in a world where it's easier to do bad, and it's easier to be jerks to each other. We don't have to be jerks. We don't have to be mean as we talk to each other in our differences. And I know the theme of our show is to focus on past news and see how it affects our present, but as we watch the show, I hope that we could focus on creating that community that he discusses. And I'm not saying that we're competing against his community. No, absolutely not. I'm just saying that, well, this is world peace for free. We want world peace for free. We want people to see the humor in that. Because if we could laugh a little bit at our own surreal behavior to each other, that hasn't changed for thousands of years. Like, there's been emperors and authoritarians and things that are happening present day that just don't make sense. Like, last I heard, Disney can't release some, like, Buzz Lightyear to China because of some homosexual thing, but Disney is also the same company that's like really going hard on pressing the pride issues, at the same time supporting this kind of behavior in China, and who's absolutely not pride friendly. You know what I'm saying? But we're figuring things out along the way, and life is long, so they can learn lessons along the way. I don't think it's good for everybody to believe that life is short, because if you believe that life is short, you feel like you have to be reactive on everything. You have to say and interrupt people when people are trying to make their point. And all I want is a world where the kids of our kids could have the confidence that they could learn things at their own pace, and with the constant reminders of death and taxes. But also, let's be calm and know that everybody's formative years are finite, meaning there's a section of everybody's lives where we have to protect them, and we have to give them the best environment so they could be the best version of themselves in the future. But how am I supposed to tie together what I learned with Marcus Aurelius with heavy stuff like that? Well, maybe we have to change a little bit change the format of our show just a little bit more. I know I came back and we're still changing things on the show, but this is the first time we're actually doing this longer than 20 minutes at a time. So once again, your feedback is going to be so important. Look, before we had no lighting. If I did like a 360 with all the cameras here, with the camera here, you'd see that we have different like lights and stuff. And I don't know if I'm professionally lit. I did it all myself, but we gotta make do with what we got right now, and we're not part of the YouTube ad money program, so we're I don't know if we shot ourselves in the foot with that, but I do feel peaceful. You know, that kind of peace knowing that your moves aren't really influenced by higher entities. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, I gotta. This is the fourth time I've been re-recorded this, so I'm ready to close. Well, there goes my attention for reflection in this age of retrospection. If you saw an ad there, then there's skullduggery afoot, because we're not part of the YouTube ad money program. So please subscribe and share to see what our Blast from the Past newscast does to the algorithm. Remember, you are loved, missed, and thought about all the time. Thought about every day. Take care, future people.